Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Low Season Traveller Insider Guides. I'm your host, Jed Brown, founder of Low Season Traveller, and today I'm joined by Bob Garner, who is the owner of Casal Fichi sustainable holiday apartments in Italy, and Bob is also a volunteer at the Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency organisation. Here at Low Season Traveller, we recently signed up to the Tourism Declares initiative as we firmly believe that tourism organisations of all sizes and forms have a responsibility to take action on sustainability issues impacting both people and planet. This episode was recorded 2 days before the COP26 conference started in Glasgow, and astonishingly, the very next day, the UK government announced that air passenger duty taxes would be halved for all UK domestic flights. In essence, this incentivises people to choose travel by air domestically when, of course, trains and other more climate-friendly forms of transport are readily available. This is why we believe that tourism's private sector has an important leadership role to play on sustainability issues, as the public sector clearly have a very different agenda. Have a listen as we speak with Bob to learn more about the organisation and what we hope to achieve. Enjoy. So Bob, you are most welcome to the Low Season Traveller Insider Guides podcast. Great to have you on the show with us.
Super, thanks for inviting me, Jed, and it's great to be here. How are you today?
I'm absolutely tip-top and in great form despite the weather, if I'm very honest with you, Bob, because it's quite miserable here in Manchester, unfortunately, but hey, it's always fine inside. Bob, first of all, just if you could, for our listeners at home, introduce yourself to us and what you do.
Yep, sure. My name is Bob Garner, and I'm the co-owner of Casal Fichi, which is 6 environmentally sustainable holiday apartments in a region of Italy called Le Marche, near the Adriatic coast, very close to Umbria and Tuscany. And we've been here for 15 years. I'm a Mancunian myself, so I can appreciate the weather you're going through today. But here in Italy, it's been a beautiful day, and we've been walking in the mountains. We love being here, hosting our guests and helping them have a lovely environmental stay.
Lovely. It sounds absolutely idyllic, like I say, especially when you consider where I'm based at the moment. So tell us a little bit about, I first came into contact with you when I was looking at Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency. Tell us a little bit about how you became involved with that, and tell us a little bit more about, for anybody out there that isn't aware of it, what's that organisation and that plight all about?
Sure. So when we set up our business here, Casal Fichi, we wanted it to be environmentally friendly. We wanted to make a difference both for our guests and for the planet. And over those 15 years, we've developed initiatives that have helped us reduce our carbon footprint. And that's been really important to us, and it's been valued and appreciated by our guests. I spend a lot of my free time not only communicating to our guests about what we do, but also communicating in the wider vacation rental industry, because the industry itself is not taking a lot of action, and there's a huge juggernaut in terms of the climate emergency coming down the line, and it's going to have a serious impact on the vacation rental industry and tourism generally. And there are a number of initiatives and reasons for that I can talk about. But to your point, just over 18 months ago, Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency was formed, and we joined soon after its formation. And the reason we joined was because what Tourism Declares is trying to do, which I'll explain in a moment, very much aligned with what we're trying to do in our organisation, what our ethics are, what our beliefs are, and what we are trying to do to reduce our impact on the environment. So what's happening in the wider tourism sector, not just in vacation rentals, but across tourism, is that it isn't able to yet respond to the climate emergency. Tourism accounts for 8% of global greenhouse gases and is approximately 10% of global industry and wealth, and 10% of jobs. So obviously tourism plays a significant role in the climate emergency, and therefore tourism needs to play a significant role in finding an appropriate response and dealing with a reduction in emissions. We know, of course, what's happening. The COP meeting starts next week, and that meeting, 196 countries plus the EU are going to be coming together to try and enhance the commitments that they gave in Paris in 2015, so that we can keep below a 1.5 degree increase by 2050 to get to net zero, and as an intermediate stage, keep emissions to a cut of 50% or more by 2030. And again, we can talk about that. And that's great. That's what governments are going to try and do. And I hope that that will be successful in the next 2 weeks at COP. But it isn't really just about what governments can do. It also is about how industry responds. And that's why Tourism Declares was formed. So Tourism Declares, representing all factors of tourism around the world, is there to galvanize our industry to give a response. So they're developing best practice, they're putting together policies and procedures and ways of working that organizations like mine and every other tourism organization around the world, big or small, can pick up, can implement, and can put into place. Because in my conversations with people, and I'm a volunteer outreach coordinator for Tourism Declares. So I speak to many people every day, trying to encourage them to take some steps and get involved. But the biggest problem that most people have, whether they're in a big organization or a small organization, is they don't know where to start. They don't know what to do, and they don't know where to start. They see the climate emergency for what it is, a huge, huge issue. And to be honest, what a lot of organizations do is they go, I'm going to put that in the too difficult to deal with box, because I'm going to get on with running my business, being successful, trying to put food on the table for my family, etc., etc. Totally understand it. We get that. And we've all been through one of the most horrendous times over the last 18 months with COVID. But COVID is going to be dwarfed by the impact and effect of the climate emergency. And ultimately, the tourism industry and every individual business within that is going to need to respond. So the point of Tourism Declares is to encourage organizations. And it's great that I know, Jed, that you and Low Season Traveller are also a member of Tourism Declares. It's brilliant. People like you are holding up your hand and saying, I recognize there is a climate emergency, and I want to be part of the solution. I want to do something. And what we find, and what's really important, is that I say to people when they're joining, you don't need to have any of the answers. You don't need to know what to do. That's one of the reasons why people join Tourism Declares, is to get those answers. You don't even have to know what questions to ask. The purpose is that we bring people in, and of course it's totally free. We're a voluntary organization, and then we help guide and develop plans for them, what we call climate action plans, over the next 12 months after they've joined, so that they can work out what they can do in their business, in their industry, to reduce their carbon footprint. And for some people, that's a quick process. For others, it takes longer. But really, our purpose is to galvanize and support and guide people, connect people, bring them together so that they can start on that path to being more environmentally friendly.
It's an absolutely wonderful organization. It's a wonderful setup, and like you said there before, recognize that it's run by volunteers, like yourself as well, which I think is fabulous. Certainly, that's why the point that you were saying, I was smiling as you were talking about how a lot of people don't know where to start, and that's absolutely the truth. It's the same for Low Season Traveller as well. We recognize what's happening. We want to do something about it, but it's about knowing where to start. And I suppose that's what it's all about. When we did declare last week, we were sort of saying, what, we as Low Season Traveller, we don't have all of the answers, and we can't pretend that we've got all the answers. All we know is that we recognize it as a climate emergency, and we want to put our hands up and say we want to do something about it. We want to be a part of this, and that's exactly why we signed up. What role, with regards to the wider climate emergency and tourism's role within it, what role has the big organizations in our sector. We've got IATA, we've got the UNWTO, we've got the World Travel and Tourism Council. What role have they played so far in this? Are they also working with yourselves? Are they working in other programs? How are they working to help us through this?
Yeah. First, I just want to also thank you for being a member. And what's important is having members like yourself, is that your membership, the people who you work with, can see the leadership role that you're taking, and hopefully many will follow your leads. And that's absolutely what we need. We need people like you who are in a leadership position to obviously encourage your members and the people that you connect with to make a difference. So that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
To your point about those bigger organizations, yes, they are involved, and many of the ones that you mentioned are already members of Tourism Declares. But what's happening next week at COP is that the Glasgow Declaration will be presented. So those organizations and others that you've mentioned have come together in collaboration with Tourism Declares. And there is a statement, an 800-word statement, a declaration that will be presented at COP next week, which is essentially calling on tourism to take the action that it needs to take for the reasons I've started to outline. And within that, there is a series of commitments that organisations will be encouraged to make, which align with the ones that Tourism Declares already has. So that we are not just working in a silo on our own, but we're bringing all those big players that you mentioned, all the key stakeholders, the individuals that have got a lot of clout and that can make a difference. We want to show all of tourism globally that we're coming together, and all of those big leadership organisations that have a role to play are playing that role. So that what's called the Glasgow Declaration will be presented next week at COP, and then individuals and organisations will be encouraged to sign that declaration, which is very similar to the Tourism Declares declaration, but is much more powerful because it's something that all of the key players are getting behind. And that's what's really important, because we need to present to COP and to the key players at COP that the tourism industry is unified in our commitment to what we need to achieve, because we don't want to be giving different signals and different initiatives to the decision makers. We need to have a unified voice that everybody can get behind, and then all of us, those big players that you mentioned and all of the small players, can go out to our individual communities and get people behind that one declaration. So that's really important, and you're going to be hearing a lot about the Glasgow Declaration over the coming days. Tourism Declares is obviously a key member of that, a key stakeholder of that, a partner of that, but all the other people that you mentioned and companies that you mentioned, organisations, are going to be key to that. And that's really, really important, because however great tourism Declares is, and we've done some good work, we're a very small organisation run by volunteers. We need to get the power and influence of those bigger players who frankly have the money and the resources to move this issue to the next level. And it's those organisations that are going to be making that push and making it work. So I'm really pleased, and you're going to hear an awful lot about the Glasgow Declaration next week and subsequent to that.
Super, and we'll obviously we'll try and report on that at Low Season Traveller as well, and keep everybody updated. When we talk about climate change and the challenge which the warming climate has brought, sometimes we see a lot in the news, which looks like it's almost impending disaster and everything else. Has there been any good news for the tourism industry with regards to the environment? And have there been any any wins? I mean, I'm sort of conscious that there's a lot of listeners out there sort of thinking, gosh, is it all doom and gloom, or has there been some good news stories where we're really seeing real progress being made on this?
Well, that's a really good question. The good news, I suppose, is that a lot of the key players are taking action and making a difference in terms of the way they present tourism to their members, to their supporters, to their stakeholders. And I think what's also good is that we're seeing very clearly in the media, in the press, a response by the public. So the public obviously understand what's going on. They connect, they can see what's happening. They work out that they can connect these dots between what they're hearing in the news, what they're seeing with their own eyes in terms of the crisis around the world, rising sea levels, sea acidification, hurricanes, floods, fires, etc. And they know that change is happening, and that is an existential crisis for humanity, because we've already got global warming at 1.23 degrees, and obviously we need to keep it below 1.5. So what's great is that those individuals and that community is growing. Those travellers are now looking for and seeking a greener way to travel. It's in the news all the time. If you just Google green travel or better ways to travel environmentally, you'll come up with a host of articles and advice about how to do that. So what's happening, and this is where the opportunity I think comes in for our industry, is that segment of travel is only going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And that creates a wonderful opportunity for your members, for my competitors, for me, and for everybody in tourism to adapt our systems, to adapt our offering and what we can present to the traveller in terms of a more environmentally careful way to stay and to travel. And I always say to people when I'm talking about this, there is absolutely nothing wrong. It's not about be a successful business or be a green business. The two go hand in hand together. Of course, sustainability is about being environmentally sustainable, but it's also being about financially sustainable. You can be the greenest, most wonderful organization in the world, but if you don't make any money and go out of business, then what have you achieved? The two have to go hand in hand. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity for the vacation rental industry, which I'm most connected to, but everybody in tourism, to recognize that demographic change and to adapt what you do and what you offer to that community, because do it before your competitors do it, and you've got a first mover advantage over other people. Do it because that's what the consumer is going to be increasingly looking for. So why wouldn't you want to offer them what you're looking for? And I've written extensively about what hosts and vacation rental managers can do, you know, a 10-stage roadmap I've written, which talks about the key things that people can do that don't cost a great deal of money and that are going to tap into that market. So I think what is really positive is that the consumers are switching on to what's needed, and the businesses have a wonderful opportunity to tap into that. And I'll give you one example, which you're probably familiar with, is that I follow very closely the data that comes from booking.com. They do an annual survey, you may be familiar with it, and they always ask some questions around environmental intentions by travellers. And what's really interesting over the last 5 years is you can see those numbers increasing about what consumers are looking for, what travellers are looking for. And I think the survey that came out a few months ago was saying that 82% of travellers were looking to stay greener on their next vacation. That is a huge number. And of course, whether you're looking for a green accommodation, let's put it that way, or not, when you're presented and you're Googling and you find two properties, they both the same price, they both have the same offering, they both give you just what you want. And one has the added advantage of being environmentally sustainable. Well, why wouldn't you choose that one? Why wouldn't you choose, you know, option B over option A? So I'm saying to the people who are currently the option A is, well, wake up to this and become an option B, because then you're going to tap into that market. Nobody, I can't believe, ever says, I'm not going to stay there because they're environmentally friendly. It can only be a turn on for travellers, whether they're seeking that or not. So I think there's a wonderful opportunity there. And people businesses, in my opinion, need to tap into that. And that's why I'm encouraging people to make that start. And one of the best ways they can do that, because time is short, money is tight, sign up to organisations like Tourism Declares, connect with your peers and your colleagues in the industry, learn from them, and let Tourism Declares help you move from where you are to where you need to be. It's a free service. What have you got to lose? All you've got to do is be committed to making a change and seeing that there are opportunities out there and wanting to capitalize on them. To me, it seems like a no-brainer. I wonder why more people don't do it. But you can be sure that they will be doing in the coming months and years, because they're going to need to adapt, and otherwise they're going to go out of business.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think there's a challenge with, when we look at holiday accommodation, is there a challenge that at the moment, the ones that are being, generally speaking, more sustainable and responsible tend to be at the higher end of the market? Is that a little bit of a challenge for our industry? You know, because what I tend to see is a lot of 5-star hotels are, you know, super good on the sustainability side, but down at the other end, at the opposite end, at the sort of the lower priced end, they're not as good on it. It's almost like, you know, 4- and 5-star places are able to sort of, you know, keep their fee structure in place and everything else. Is that a challenge that you see? Are you seeing any of that?
I've never been asked that question before, Jed. It's a really good question. I don't see it. I mean, if I take my business, you know, we're a small business, just 6 holiday apartments. I wouldn't say we're at the low end and we're not at the high end. I guess we're somewhere in the middle. We haven't found that to be the case. We've put in place these initiatives. And of course, it isn't, you know, like you just turn a switch and then you're totally green and everything's perfect in the world. And how can it be? Because these things take time to develop. I mean, we personally have been developing that over 15 years. I mean, I think what people can do is make some small changes, you know, whatever is appropriate. And we can talk about what some of those small changes might be. But they then have the opportunity to start to badge themselves that they are environmentally friendly. Of course, I'm not talking about greenwashing here. They need to be genuinely doing some things. And they can do that also by badging themselves as being a member of Tourism Declares. But then they can develop a plan, and this is what the climate action plans are all about, is what they're going to do in the future. Because we're all on this, you know, it's a hackneyed phrase, but we're all on this journey. Nobody is perfect. We're all learning from each other. Some people are a little bit ahead of you. Some people are behind you. I'm still finding out lots of things and learning all the time. But what I try to do is pass that knowledge on and experience and those ideas to other people, because why go through that learning yourself when you can just tap into what the solution is that company A or company B have already done. These things needn't cost money. It doesn't mean you've got to hack up your prices to do it. It's just about having the commitment to do it and putting those initiatives in place. So I don't see that it's about a high-end value. I think all businesses can do it. And they can do it at an appropriate speed that works for them, but they can do some small things. They can turn them around in just a few days. And I would also encourage people to think about those markets that I was talking about that you can open yourself up to. Obviously, particularly low season traveller, I understand the offering that you make, and that we need to be also spreading the load of tourism so that communities and regions are not overly burdened with tourism. And that is a great fit for being environmentally friendly, because we can encourage travellers to come early on in the season, late on in the season, during the winter, and experience wonderful holidays in fantastic regions and stay in wonderfully environmentally friendly places, and enjoy nature. So the two go very closely in hand, in my opinion. And it's a win-win-win. It's a win for you, it's a win for the customer, and it's a win for the environment. So it seems to me perfect.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more with that, Bob. Tell me this: what more? So, as tour operators, you know, so you know, we're I suppose more on the other side of, or a slightly different side of the fence to yourself as an accommodation provider. What we're starting to do now is we're making sure that whenever we speak to a hotelier or a tourism destination, one of the first questions we ask is, can we see a copy of your sustainability policy? And it's amazing actually how many don't have one. But by always asking, it just means that there's more of a chance that they're actually going to have one, because if more people are asking, then they're going to have one. Is that your kind of message for consumers as well, to actually start checking, both with your tour operators or accommodation providers, start looking at, are they a sustainable organization? Do they have a sustainability policy? Do they have the right kind of framework in place? And that's not to say don't book it if they don't. It's just saying, ask them that question. Ask them, why have they got single-use plastics in the bathrooms? Just ask the question. You don't have to complain about it, but just ask the question. Is that something that the consumers can do more to help out as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you 100%. In the future, environmental sustainability is going to be as de rigueur as effective Wi-Fi. And it'll come a point where, you would very rarely you would go in this place that doesn't have a good Wi-Fi signal. People expect it now, and it's a given that you're going to have it. It will be ultimately a given that you will have to have and need to have environmental sustainability. Otherwise, you're just not going to be able to compete in the marketplace. I totally agree that it's also some responsibility is on the consumer, and consumers are learning, they're becoming more educated, they're becoming more savvy about what's on offer. And of course, what's also important, that they spot where there's greenwashing, and we need to be seeing genuine statements on websites, genuine statements of sustainability that can be proven. And that's why some of the accreditation schemes can be useful. There's a lot of them. We're currently with a member of Green Tourism, and they have a very rigorous accreditation system, and we're a gold member of them. So having that badged on our website gives a clear statement to the consumer, if they understand it, that we have passed a very high bar in terms of what we're doing. And that's quite useful. And I think it's also useful that we're a member of Tourism Declares, because Tourism Declares is not just an accreditation scheme. You actually have to put a plan together, as I talked about, and publish that plan. And when I'm working with businesses, so I'm working with suppliers, let's say, my question is exactly what you said, is tell me about your environmentally sustainable policies and procedures. What do you do? And if they tell me, I say, well, now show me where that is publicly on your website, or somewhere that I can see it publicly. And if it isn't there, I don't believe them, and I don't work with them. Yeah. So it's not just about sustainability, although that's a key part. It's also about their attitude and their approach to working in the community. I'll give you a couple of examples. So let me think. So our toilet paper here, we use Who Gives a Crap toilet paper. Great name, big business now. You may well have come across them, Australian company. They make sustainable toilet paper, and they give 50% of their profits to developing countries to put toilet facilities and water facilities in for people who don't have them. That's fantastic. It doesn't cost the consumer any more money, but I can see that as a business, they're doing something for the community, and that's brilliant. And that's why we use them, because the product is environmentally sustainable and the company is ethical. So we use them. Another example would be Jerry, the water bottles. We give a very nice metal water bottle flask to our guests on arrival as a gift, as an encouragement to talk about single-use plastic, and encourage them to take water with them when they go out, rather than buying a bottle of water in a plastic bottle. And Jerry, the company, give all of it, it's a charity, and they give all of their profits, again, to help people in developing countries, mainly in Africa, to build facilities to help them with water facilities, etc. And so, and I've written again about this, I think it's really crucial. If you're going to use a company that does something sustainable in the environment, that gives back to the community. We've always got choices, company A, company B, not just about what we present to our consumers, but who we take from, who are our suppliers. And so I now always go for the supplier that's doing something in the community. Because why wouldn't you? I mean, why not work with like-minded people who have the same philosophy as you do, rather than giving money to businesses who are making profits, and those profits are just going to shareholders and there's nothing coming back into the community. It's great to see when it happens, and it's happening more and more. So we do it all the time with all our suppliers now. And if I'm talking to somebody and they don't do it, I say, let me explain to you what you could do. Go away and do it and come back. Now, of course, we're a tiny, tiny, tiny cog in this huge mechanism. We don't have much control. But when more and more people do it, whether you're a consumer or whether you're an employer, eventually that message gets out and people start to shift. We know that a lot of the big corporations, not just in tourism, but across the industries around the world, if you go to any big organization now, most will have some sort of sustainability policy. But it's still quite rare in tourism, and that needs to change. And we need tourism to wake up and start to take action in terms of what they do and what they ask of their suppliers. But it will come.
Absolutely, it will. I think as well, one thing that we've spoken about with a few guests in the past is the whole notion of, rightly or wrongly, we live in the age of guilt. We all feel guilty, and I do it myself. If I go to the supermarket and I drive down there and it's probably a 20-minute walk and I feel a bit bad, I'm thinking, should have walked really. If I get a coffee when I'm out in the middle of Manchester from one of those big chains like a Starbucks or whatever, and I'm looking at that cup as I'm drinking and I'm thinking, this probably isn't good. We live in the age of guilt. We feel guilty for an awful lot of things, especially with regards to the environment and sustainability. Therefore, there is an awful lot, I think, to be said for the biggest business opportunity we have is any guilt offsetting. So anything, for me as a consumer, anything that can help me offset my guilt is actually, that's going to be valuable to me. So when I travel, if I'm staying in a hotel or a guest house that is sustainable, I just feel that's one less thing I need to feel guilty about. I feel slightly better about that. Maybe I actually feel quite good about myself for doing that because I'm actually now sort of contributing. Do you think that that's how a lot of consumers see it as well? They sort of start to feel a little bit better about themselves and offset some of that guilt that we feel on a daily basis?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, we all do that. I mean, I try very, very hard to try and mitigate my impact on the environment, but we sometimes we're in situations where you just can't do it. There's no alternative than having some impact. Everything we do, everything that we buy, every action that we take has some impact on the environment. There is no way of escaping that. Obviously, we can all understand where the bigger impacts are, in terms of what we eat, in terms of travel, in terms of heating our homes, in terms of whether we fly or not, and whether we drive and how long we drive for, etc. Those are the bigger issues that people can start to take action on. And it's not for me to preach to people on that, but we all understand that those are some of the things that can make a difference. But I think it's also interesting what you say about trying to mitigate that guilt. And we try to do that through what we do in our organization, in our small business. People will either fly into us or they will drive a long way to get to us. So, of course, they've had an impact on the environment. What we do, and it's only part of a solution, I would really want to stress that it isn't a total solution, is, and we've been doing it for a couple of years now, is that we put a premium, a very small supplement on their stay, that they can say, no, I don't want to pay it. And that money goes to carbon offsetting. And whatever that amount is, it's currently now €20 a booking. We match it with our own €20 from our resources. And that goes to plant trees and do some carbon offsetting. It is not the full solution. We need to reduce emissions, but it's a partial solution. It's part of a package. And what's been really interesting is we have never had, because it's optional, we've never had one single guest say they don't want to pay that. Not one, ever. Because it's a relatively small amount in the scale of their holiday. And we know it, we see it from what they say, we see it in the reviews that they write. We have over 600 five-star reviews on TripAdvisor. We see, because they write about it, they say that they've enjoyed their stay and they explain why that is, etc., the normal things. But they will often comment about our environmental policies and what we do and how we do it and what they've learned and what they've gone home themselves. And there's no greater feeling when they go home and they write back and thank us for their stay. And they say, oh, we've just introduced single-use plastic for our cleaning products. Or we've just put in an organic vegetable garden. Or we've just taken up using Who Gives a Crap toilet paper. That's wonderful. You've changed one person's attitude just a fraction, and they've made a difference in their lives. And that's wonderful. But they will often go home and say, I feel like I've stayed at your place, you're making those differences, so that's made a difference to my stay. I feel that my holiday was just that little bit more environmentally friendly. And it does, it takes away a little bit of that guilt. And to be honest, it's good business. We have a 60% return rate. People come back again and again. They refer their friends and family to us. We take very few recommendations or bookings through the OTAs because we have created a sustainable business that generates enough income for us and brings people back again and again. So I'm not putting all of that down to our environmental policies, but it's a key part and it works for us. So there's no reason why it can't work for other businesses too.
Absolutely. Bob, our time sadly is up, but I want to thank you so much for speaking to us and sharing your insights, and hopefully it's been quite informative for a lot of our listeners out there. But before you go as well, Bob, you need to give us your website address so that everybody can find you and book that guilt-free trip to Italy in the low season, obviously, I should say. What's your web address there?
Our web address is casaldefichi.com, which is obviously Italian because we have fig trees, so it means farm fig house or fig house farm. But perhaps you can put a link to that in the show notes. And I would also encourage people, and perhaps I'll give you my LinkedIn profile, and people can connect with me there. So if there are people who would like to start that journey, if they're in the travel industry and want to know what to do, connect with me and I will help you for free and get you started on that journey. On LinkedIn, you'll see me there every day writing and talking about what's important and how we can make a difference. So I would really love to help some of the people who might be listening or watching this.
Perfect. Bob, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your evening in lovely Italy, and hopefully we'll speak to you again soon.
Absolutely, and thanks for inviting me. Cheers.
So there you have it. Our thanks again to Bob for taking the time to share his insights with us today. And as Bob mentioned, this is not about having all of the answers, nor being perfect from a sustainability standpoint. It's more about saying, we recognise the problem, this is important to us, and whilst we're not perfect, we commit to improving what we're doing so that tourism can continue to play a vital role in the world economically, socially, politically, and it can continue to protect and nurture our natural and cultural assets for future generations to enjoy. That's our show for this week, but please do visit tourismdeclares.com to add your support and to learn more. It doesn't cost a penny, and you'll be contributing to solving the single most significant challenge of our time. Thanks as always for your company. Have a great week wherever you are. Stay healthy, stay safe, keep your travel dreams alive. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please do share it with your friends, family, and social networks. Finally, remember that travel is always better and fairer for the planet, the local communities, and you, the travellers, when it's without the crowds.